When a neighbor hears strange noises and discovers a hidden journal in the walls of her house, she uncovers a horrifying secret buried for years. Literally. What starts as a simple act of curiosity unravels into a murder investigation, a missing child, and a man who's been hiding in plain sight. It started with a receipt. Just a stupid little receipt for 2 coffees and a croissant from a cafe in our city. The problem? My husband was supposed to be out of town. I found it crumpled up in his coat pocket while grabbing it for dry cleaning. It had the date. Last Friday. The same Friday he claimed to be in Boston for a networking event. I stared at it for a long time, longer than I care to admit, hoping it was a mistake. But the timestamp was 9:12 a.m., the same time he texted me. Just landed, heading into meetings. That was the first crack. And once you see the first, you start noticing all the others. He used to text me constantly when he traveled. Pictures of hotel rooms, his boarding passes, casual selfies at overpriced restaurants. But the last few trips? Radio silence. Maybe a goodnight text if I was lucky. He always had an excuse. Long day, battery died, conference ran late. I started getting anxious. Not angry, not yet, just unsettled. So I waited for his next trip. When he said he was flying to Chicago, I didn't argue. I smiled, kissed him goodbye, and the moment his Uber pulled away, I started digging. I called the hotel he said he booked. They had no reservation under his name. I checked his airline's app on our shared tablet. No flights booked, nothing. So I made a decision I never thought I would. I followed him. That Friday, I called in sick to work, put on sunglasses and a hoodie, and tailed his Uber from a distance in my own car. It didn't go to the airport. It went downtown, to a modern high-rise condo building in a trendy part of the city. I watched him buzz into the building like he'd done it 100 times. I waited 30 minutes. Then I parked, walked up, and asked the concierge, "Hi, I'm visiting a friend. Can you remind me which unit Tom Miller lives in?" The concierge didn't even blink. "Unit 1204. You're good to go." The elevator ride felt like my heartbeat, slow and thudding. I didn't knock. I just stood outside the door and listened. There was laughter. A woman's voice. A child's voice. I stepped back. I felt cold, like my bones had frozen inside me. When he came home that evening, I pretended everything was normal. I cooked dinner. I asked about his trip. He made up details. I nodded. I didn't confront him, because I needed time. The next few weeks, I gathered evidence. Phone records, GPS logs, even his financial statements. Turns out this had been going on for over a year. A secret, second life. He wasn't just cheating. He had another family, a woman and a little girl who looked about 4. He used me for stability, for appearances, for money. Our entire marriage was a mask he wore to cover the other one. So I made a plan. Not to scream, not to cry, but to disappear. I contacted a lawyer. I filed for divorce quietly. I transferred my savings. I rented a place under a different name. And then, on a Thursday night, while he was working late, I packed up my things and left. No note, no warning. Just gone. The next morning, I turned off my phone and watched from a cafe across the street as he arrived home and found the house empty. I wish I could say I felt victorious. I didn't. I felt free. I thought I had planned everything. New apartment, new job, new number, no social media, no trace. But I underestimated him. It started with the emails, not from him, from her. The subject line read, "I think we need to talk." I didn't know about you either. At first I thought it was fake, a trick, but something about the wording made me open it. She introduced herself. Lauren. She said she had been with Tom for almost 5 years. She didn't know he was married. He told her I was a crazy ex who wouldn't stop calling. Then she wrote, "I only found out because he left his phone unlocked. There were pictures of you two at your wedding. I was shaking." She said she confronted him. He got angry, not guilty, not apologetic, just angry. He told her I didn't matter, that our marriage was dead anyway. that she was his future. She didn't buy it, especially after she Googled my name and found the public court filing for divorce. Lauren didn't know I'd left him already. When she saw the date and realized I filed weeks before finding out about her, something clicked for her. She sent me a phone number, said if I ever wanted to talk, she was there. I didn't respond, not at first, but a week later, I saw him, outside my new job. He stood across the street watching me. I went back inside, told my manager I wasn't feeling well, and slipped out the back. When I got home, I had a voicemail. His voice, trembling. "Please, just talk to me. I didn't mean for it to go like this. We can fix it." That night, I called Lauren. We talked for 3 hours, and I found out everything. He told her he was a widower at first, then changed his story 6 months in, said I was estranged and unstable. When she got pregnant, he promised her a ring, a house, a future. He never gave her any of it. He just showed up, played dad for a day or two, and left. Always traveling for work. He was living 2 lies, and doing it so well, we both believed him for years. Lauren and I made a decision. We met in a neutral spot, a cafe near the courthouse, and then we walked in together, her filing for full custody, and me finalizing the divorce with a restraining order. We were done being quiet. It had been 2 weeks since Lauren and I filed everything. I changed the locks again. I stayed with a friend for a few nights just in case. I thought it was over, until one cold morning I opened my apartment door to a sound I couldn't place. Soft, muffled, like whimpering. And there he was. Tom, holding a baby, a little girl bundled in a pink coat, crying, shivering. He looked like a wreck, eyes sunken, hair unwashed, shirt half-buttoned. "Please," he said, "just let me in. I don't know what else to do." I didn't move. My heart was pounding so loud it echoed in my ears. "Where's Lauren?" I asked. He looked down. "She's gone, took off, said she couldn't do it. I don't know where she is. This is your fault." My fault. Unreal. He tried to push past me, but I stepped in front of the door. "You need to leave. Right now." "What am I supposed to do with her?" he snapped, nodding toward the baby. I couldn't believe the audacity. He wanted me, his ex-wife, the woman he lied to for years, to take care of the child he had with his mistress. I told him I was calling the police if he didn't walk away. He hesitated, then left the baby carrier right there, on my doorstep, and walked away. By the time I picked up my phone, he was gone. I called the police the second Tom disappeared around the corner. They told me to stay put, not to touch anything, and that an officer would be over shortly. I stood there, frozen in my doorway, staring down at this tiny baby who had no idea how messed up the world around her was. She had stopped crying, just blinked up at me, big brown eyes, silent. When the officer arrived, I explained everything. The affair, the divorce, how Tom just showed up and abandoned the child. They took the baby into protective custody and said a social worker would be in touch. But here's where things got strange. The officer asked if I knew the child's name. I didn't. He asked if I knew who the mother was. "Lauren, right?" I said. "My ex-husband's affair partner?" He gave me a look I didn't like. "There's no record of a Lauren matching that description giving birth recently. Not in this county or the next. We ran checks through the hospital network." "What are you saying?" "We're not sure who this child belongs to." That night, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It just said, "She wasn't mine either. He lied to me too. Lauren." And then she blocked the number. So now I'm stuck with a new question. If the baby isn't Lauren's, whose is she? And how long has Tom been doing this? The next morning, I didn't go to work. I couldn't. All I could think about was the baby. Where did she come from? Why did Tom leave her with me? And what did Lauren mean by "she wasn't mine either"? I called the officer who had been on the case the night before, but he hadn't heard anything new. The baby was temporarily placed in foster care pending an investigation. No updates. No mother had come forward. No matches in the hospital system. It was like this baby didn't exist. I needed answers. So I did something stupid. I drove to Tom's old apartment, the one he moved into after the divorce. I still had a key. I guess he never thought to change the lock. It was mostly empty, dusty. There were boxes, half-packed, a few baby toys, a stroller, a crib still half-assembled. But what made my blood run cold was the envelope sitting on the kitchen counter. It was thick, addressed to no one, just labeled in Tom's handwriting, in case something happens. Inside was a birth certificate. The name on it was not Lauren. It was some woman named Melanie Carter. I didn't recognize it, but listed under father was Thomas Reynolds. Tom. So she was his daughter. But Melanie Carter? A name I had never heard. I searched it online and nearly dropped my phone. She had been reported missing 6 months ago. According to the articles, she was last seen leaving a prenatal appointment. Her car was found abandoned. She was never found. And now her baby with Tom, had been left on my doorstep. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just cheating. This was something much darker. Do you want to see what happens next in part 6? We could follow the narrator as she turns everything over to the police, or as she investigates further and discovers what really happened to Melanie Carter. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying everything in my head. Lauren's words, Tom's breakdown, the baby, the missing woman, Melanie Carter. It all felt like some twisted nightmare, but something gnawed at me. The way Tom had always been, methodical. If he was hiding something, especially something this big, there'd be more. Something he left behind. So I went through his old emails. I still had access to one of his forgotten accounts he used for bills and subscriptions. It took hours of digging, but then I found it. A monthly invoice for a storage unit, 1 town over. Still active. Still registered under his name. I knew I was crossing a line, but I didn't care anymore. I needed answers. The next morning I drove out to the facility. The guy at the front desk barely glanced at the old ID I still had in my wallet. I signed in as Tom and walked down the corridor to Unit 417. It smelled like dust and oil. The metal door creaked as I pulled it open. Inside were boxes, stacks of them, labeled in Tom's handwriting, Mel 2023, clinic notes, ultrasounds, letters never sent. My hands were shaking. I opened one and found pictures of Melanie, smiling, pregnant. Some were selfies with Tom. Others were surveillance shots from far away, through bushes, parked cars. Melanie didn't pose in those. She was being watched. Then I found a spiral notebook. The first page had her name. The second was a journal entry, written by her. Tom won't let me leave. He said he'd take the baby if I tried. I'm scared. I think he's following me. I don't know who to trust anymore. There were more pages, each more desperate than the last. I sank to the concrete floor and just sat there, surrounded by this woman's stolen life. I don't know how long I stayed, but when I left, I took photos of everything. And I drove straight to the police, not just with the notebook, not just the letters, but the entire truth. Tom hadn't just had an affair. He hadn't just abandoned a baby. He may have been involved in Melanie's disappearance. And the baby left on my porch? She wasn't just a mistake. She might have been a warning, or a cry for help from a man who finally broke. The detectives didn't say much at first. I sat in that cold, gray interview room for what felt like hours while they took my statement, scanned the photos from the storage unit, and bagged the physical evidence I'd brought. When I showed them the journal entries, they looked at each other in a way that made my stomach turn, like something clicked, or confirmed something worse. Turns out, Melanie Carter had been reported missing 5 months ago, by her sister. Tom had never even been questioned. No one had connected the dots because Melanie had no listed partner or cohabitant. She lived alone. Her pregnancy? Not even on record at the time. But now they had something. And that something was explosive. They kept asking questions I didn't have answers to. Did Tom ever mention a cabin? Did I know what kind of car Melanie drove? Had I ever seen her in person? All I could say was no, and that I didn't know who I had married anymore. They took the baby into protective custody while Child Services opened a full investigation. I broke down sobbing in that room when they carried her away in a carrier, bundled in the same blanket she'd arrived in. It didn't matter that she wasn't biologically mine. She felt like mine now. 2 days later, I got a call. They'd found Tom. He was holed up in a rundown motel 2 hours north using a fake name. When they arrested him, he didn't resist, but he wouldn't say anything either, not until they brought up the journal. Apparently, his face went white. He asked for a lawyer immediately. That night, one of the detectives called me privately. "There's something you should know," he said. "We found Melanie's phone. It was wrapped in foil and duct tape, hidden in a false compartment in the storage unit. The last text she ever sent was to you." "What?" I choked. "It was never delivered, but it's there, time-stamped and logged in the device." He read it aloud. "Please. I think Tom is dangerous. If you get this, protect the baby." My legs gave out. I don't know how I made it through that night. Tom is now facing multiple charges: child endangerment, kidnapping, obstruction, and possibly more if they uncover proof Melanie is dead. But right now, she's still technically a missing person. Her body hasn't been found. The baby, her daughter, was placed in temporary foster care. But I've already started the process to get guardianship because I owe that woman. Because I see her in the baby's eyes. Because in some twisted way, we both loved the same monster and we both paid the price. And because I'm done being the passive one. This isn't over. Not until we find Melanie. Not until that child has the truth. And not until I burn down every last lie Tom ever told. A week after Tom's arrest, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Just my name, scrawled in Sharpie. Inside was a flash drive and a note. "He kept more than you think. Look behind the drywall. Unit 17. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I knew it had to be about the storage unit, the same one I'd already been to, the same one I thought I'd emptied. But there were more secrets. I called the lead detective immediately, and they agreed to meet me there with a warrant. It was raining hard that day, like something out of a movie, and my shoes were soaked through by the time we got to Unit 17. They brought in tools and began tapping on the walls, listening for hollow spots. And then, thud. A portion of the side wall gave way under light pressure. Behind it, hidden between the drywall and concrete, was a space just wide enough to slide a box in. And inside that, a lock of hair tied with blue ribbon, a set of keys, a pink pacifier, a second journal, newer than the first, and a burner phone wrapped in plastic. It felt like opening a coffin. The detective gave me gloves and let me look through the journal first. My heart was in my throat. The first entry read, "If you're reading this, he's finally been caught, or I'm dead. Either way, thank you for not giving up." It was Melanie, her writing again, only this time, she knew she might not make it. Over the next dozen pages, she detailed what Tom had done. He'd convinced her to quit her job, move in with him temporarily, isolated her from her friends, took her phone. When she got pregnant, he became possessive, controlling. She wanted to leave, but every time she tried, he threatened to take the baby and disappear. The last entry was dated 5 days before her disappearance. "I'm going to try and leave tonight. I have the extra keys. I packed a bag. If I make it, I'll go to the police. If I don't, please protect her. Don't let him raise her. Please." I sat there sobbing, unable to breathe. They dusted the phone for prints, then powered it up. There were photos. One of her in the mirror, 8 months pregnant. One of her holding the baby, swaddled, crying, red and new. And then, one of her bruised, sitting on the floor, eyes blackened. The last image was of a wooded area, no people, just trees, fog. And in the bottom right corner, barely visible, a metal signpost with a number. "Looks like GPS coordinates," the detective muttered. "And that's where we're going next. I don't know what we'll find, but I know now what he was capable of. And I know I owe Melanie one last thing. the truth, the full, unburied truth. The GPS coordinates led us 2 hours north, deep into a wooded area just past the county line. The air smelled like wet pine, and the only sounds were the crunch of boots and the occasional crow. The detective had called in local law enforcement and a search team with dogs. It felt official, final. We hiked in for nearly 30 minutes before we saw it. A clearing. Flat ground, freshly disturbed soil. One of the officers stopped and pointed to the metal signpost from the photo. It was old, rusted, covered in moss, but it matched. They roped the area off and began digging. It didn't take long. About 3 feet down, they hit something hard. A tarp. Inside, remains. Human. Female. The moment they pulled out the bracelet, I knew it was hers. Melanie was never missing. She was buried here all along. DNA confirmed it within days. Tom had killed her after she tried to leave. The baby? He told police she died during childbirth, that it was a stillbirth. But that was a lie, too. The journal in the wall, the phone, the photos, Melanie had delivered. That child could still be out there. Somewhere. Someone might be raising her, thinking she was theirs, a private adoption, or worse, an illegal one. Now that's the new investigation. As for Tom, he's facing murder charges, kidnapping, unlawful disposal of remains, and a dozen more things. He hasn't said a word since his arrest. I testified. I sat in the courtroom and looked him in the eyes. He didn't flinch. But I did, because I saw what no one else did. The monster behind the neighborly smile. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I never found the key. If I never asked questions. If I let that barking dog keep me inside. But I didn't. I opened the door. I listened. And now Melanie has a voice again. I still visit her grave sometimes. The city gave her a proper burial. They even etched her words onto the stone. Please protect her. And I will. Until that little girl is found, until she knows who her mother was, I won't stop, not ever.